Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Let's go ahead and wrap up the month of April. And the first thing I have to mention is the one book I will be bringing over into the month of May that I'm not going to be able to quite finish in April, and that is Greenwood by Michael Christie. This is a book that I had some friends recommended to me. A bunch of them read it in a Discord I'm in, and so far it has been an interesting experience. I'm really not sure what to expect. They all just kind of kept talking about it and kept telling me to read it, so here I am making my way through it. It is definitely set into a future Earth. I think the year is 2038, where there has been, climate impact that has basically caused fungus and all kinds of blight to destroy trees in most of the world, and all kinds of problems that happen with that. But I really think it's going to turn into more of a personal story of our main character and self-discovery and that kind of thing. But so far it has been pretty good, so we'll see if that is a good read that my friends recommended to me. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and talk about what I did finish in the month of April. And we have to start off with the first book I read, and hopefully you can see it. It's a little glossy with the lights, but that is Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in his, I believe it is just Empire of the Vampire trilogy, which is also the name of the first book. And this was a fantastic read. This was basically everything I wanted and more after reading the first one earlier this year. It was just more of the first book in the best possible way. We did get some character growth, we got some world expanding, and I think Kristoff did just a really brilliant job of showing how awful the vampires are in this story. I think a lot of authors would try to have them have a piece of humanity left in them, and I think that's a pretty common trope where an author tries to redeem a bad guy. It's something that actually really drives me crazy. Just let somebody be bad, let them do bad things, and I think that is something Kristoff has done a fantastic job in this series. The vampires are awful. They are terrible creatures. You hate them, and you understand just how despicable they are because they do things that like a sadist would do. Everything is just, pleasure for them, pain for others, and I just think it's super well done. Now, obviously, if you did not enjoy the first book, you are not going to enjoy the second one. There isn't a big difference. I think like I said, it's just more and better, and I did give this a 4-star rating. Next up, I finished another book too in a trilogy, and that was Sunbringer by Hannah Kanner, the first book being God Killer, and this book was not as good as Empire of the Damned. Unfortunately, this book had that middle book syndrome where it really felt like we got some falling actions from the first book, but we were really setting up everything for the last book. It felt like there were so many things that happened so slowly, so just meandering, and just things that are probably going to pay off in the last book. Like, this book made me very excited for the last book, but this book itself just felt like I didn't get a whole lot out of it. It's not an extremely long book. I mean, like you can see, it's not like anything like epic fantasy length, and there were still times where I felt it was too long and it dragged. I didn't like that my favorite character was kind of sidelined for most of the story. I didn't like that the characters, one thing I really liked about the first book is the group of characters we have together. And at the end of the first book, actually, I'm not going to say that because it's kind of a spoiler, so I'm redact that, but there were just some things in here that I did not enjoy as much as I would have if some things were different. But once again, still very excited for the third book. I think the third book is going to be very good if the things that are set up in here are paid off. I can't see myself not liking it. And I will say, if you are somebody who appreciates a diverse cast of characters, this is a series you should check out. And I mean diverse, and not even just like what people look like, but different disabilities and those kinds of things. There is a wide spectrum of people represented in this series. So if that's something you like to see in your stories, you should definitely give this book a chance. Well, technically not this book, you have to read God Killer first, but this series a chance. And I'm not sure if I said it, but I did end up giving this a 3-star rating. It was fine, liked it, really hopeful for the next one. After Sunbringer, I jumped into Stephen King. He is an author that I am very quickly falling in love with. I've read my 3rd Stephen King book, the other 2 being It and Cujo, and this month I read Misery. And wow, this is the best one yet. This is absolutely my favorite Stephen King book. Just things happen in this book that I'm never going to forget. I know the movie, I still need to watch it. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, but I had people telling me how good the movie is and how Kathy Bates is the character Annie and how well she does and just how she like steals the show in the movie. And honestly, that character in the book is just a character, probably the best villain I've ever read. And it's strange to call her a villain because she's not a villain in like the traditional sense, especially when, I'm mostly a fantasy reader. So you have like a bad guy who's like wants to take over the world and all this kind of stuff. And that is not the case with Annie. Annie has a lot of other problems that she needs to deal with. And man, what a character. She's so great. This is a very atmospheric book, but in a strange way. I think I said in my review that there's like 3 characters. There's Annie, Paul, and then the house that you're in with Paul. And man, just what a story. So great. I did give it a 4-star, and it just makes me excited to keep going with King. I know he has a huge catalog, and I'm super late to the bandwagon, but Misery was just a really special book for me. After Misery, I did actually I ended up doing 2 sci-fi reads, but my first sci-fi read of the month, and that was Red Shirts by John Scalzi. I read my first John Scalzi earlier this year, and that was Starter Villain, the book with the cat on it. I quite enjoyed that book. I thought it would, or maybe that was last year. Anyways, fairly recently I read that book. I think it was last year, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It was nothing like groundbreaking. It didn't, a lot of sci-fi, it really like pushes the boundary of like certain philosophical and human questions, and that is not the case with either of the John Scalzi books I have read, though this one, maybe there's a little bit more of that. I will say I did give this one a 3-star rating. I think this book, it played with the idea of being meta, and like, if you know what red shirts are in Star Trek, it kind of plays with that idea and like how things are affected. I haven't done a full review for this one yet, though. I will be doing it soon, and I liked it. I don't know. There was something missing from this book, and while I do think it's clever, I'm not sure it's, something that is going to live on in my mind for an extremely long time. While it was good, and I'll probably read some more John Scalzi because I do find him to be an easy writer to read and like kind of get through, and it seems like a lot of his stuff is kind of more fun and lighthearted. This isn't a book that, is going to stick with me for the long haul. So I mentioned I ended up doing 2 sci-fi reads this month, and the other one was this, A Time of Changes by Robert Silverberg, and this was a book that played with some of those philosophical human ideas that I think sci-fi is traditionally known for doing. This is a hard book for me to recommend to a lot of people. I don't know if this is one of the books that a lot of other people will like. It was written in 1971, so if you know anything about like sci-fi from that kind of age, there are definitely some of those kinds of things in here. But for me, I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was super good, very thought-provoking. The general premise is we are on a world where the individual is not supposed to exist. So like if I were to say I, that would be like an obscenity. That would be something horrible for somebody to say. Everyone refers to themselves as one, or the vernacular of the people of the planet is very strange, and there are just some like very interesting ideas around self, and there's some very interesting things of like self-exploration. I'm curious on if some of it is like a metaphor for like drug exploration and like experimenting with drugs. There's definitely a lot going on in here that I'm not 100% sure on. I'd love to like read some more and like fully understand what Silverberg was going for in this book, but I really enjoyed it. The atmosphere of being on the planet, the character himself, I found him to just be fascinating, and I think maybe part of it was I'm transported to such an alien world in this book that it was interesting to learn about and just kind of like experience. So once again, I don't know if this is something I would recommend to a lot of you, but for me, this was a great read, and I did end up giving it 4 stars. And the last book I finished in the month of April is Return to Adan by fellow booktuber Philip Chase. This is the last book in his I think it's just a Dan trilogy is what he refers to it as, and I will say that it definitely stuck the landing. I had a great time with this book. I did take quite a long time to read it, but I just was enjoying it and just kind of slowly chipping away at it. I gave it a solid 4-star ranking. It is my favorite of the series. It is pretty close between it and book 2, but I think this one edges it out. Man, the ending, the actual like ending of this is just fantastic. I don't even want to say any more other than I really enjoyed it, because I don't want to like lead people into anything. But yeah, Phil did some things in this book that when they were first happening, I was so worried. There's something he does at the very start of this book that I'll get to more in my full review, but I was so worried because I think it's such a hard thing for an author to pull off, and I'm so glad he did it. It worked so well, and I'm so glad to be done with this trilogy. It was a great time. There are definitely some very strong themes of like oneness and like togetherness, and I don't know, I just found a lot of that to be cool. I don't know if that's because I've studied some of the same things that Philip put into this book from Eastern religions, and maybe that just resonated to me with a little bit more, but I thought this was a great book, great way to finish it, and if you have not read this trilogy yet, you definitely should. With all of that being said, 6 books this month that I finished. Now, Return to Adan, I did read a lot of that over the past couple of months, but I did finish it here, so it is in the running for my book of the month. And I will be honest, when I started this month, I thought it would either be Return to Adan or Empire of the Damned, and out of left field, Misery came in and stole the crown. Just such a special book. I really did just it's weird to say I had a good time with it because it is a pretty horrific and terrifying book, but man, that is just it's a heck of a book. It's something that's going to stay with me for a long time. Not that Return to Adan and Empire of the Damned are not going to stay with me, because they definitely are, but Misery is just one of those books. You know, it's really special, and so I feel very fortunate in this month where I read 3 books that were are definitely going to be up there for me. Actually, A Time of Changes too. That's four books this month that were just fantastic. All 4 of those were like in contention for it. And so I'm going to probably look back at April at the end of this year and just be like, wow, how did 4 of my best books of the year end up in 1 month? I'm a little spoiled here. So yeah, Misery did get my book of the month. Now, quickly switching over to manga and comics, I am pretty much caught up on all of my manga that I've been reading, which includes Berserk, Vinland Saga, My Hero, Boruto. It looks like right before I recorded this, Black Clover released 2 chapters after a couple months, so I guess I'm technically behind on that. I am also still slowly working my way through One Piece. I've probably read like 2 chapters, 3 chapters this month. Once again, got to be in the mood for it. It's just, you know, one of those things that happen. Same thing, I'm slowly reading through Dragon Ball Z. I think I read like 1 chapter of that this month. Another thing, it's not super high on my priority list or anything like that, but I have been enjoying that. And one other thing that I did want to mention, I think I mentioned it in my TBR, but I will be reading this. This is 8 Billion Genies. This is going to be like a movie and maybe some TV shows on Amazon Prime. I thought it sounded pretty interesting, and the art in here is very beautiful, and the basic premise of it is everywhere at precisely the same moment, everyone on Earth gets a genie and 1 wish. Thought it sounded fun. I don't know if I'll do a full review for this whenever I finish it here soon. Actually, I haven't started yet. I'm just assuming it won't take me that long to read. But it feels like fantasy enough that even though it's in the comic form, I think I might end up go ahead and do a review for it because it seems really fun. And then quickly to end things with some TV/video game talk, I have 2 episodes left of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I feel like I have been so close to finishing the series for like 2 or 3 months now, and for whatever reason, me and my girlfriend have just not sat down and finished it yet. So hopefully maybe this week we'll finish it because we're so close. And you know, this has been a series we've been watching for quite a while now. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I do want to see how the conclusion of the series ends. This final season has definitely not been my favorite. I think it's been okay. Honestly, the past 2 seasons, there's been things that have bothered me throughout, but in general, I'm gonna have very fond memories of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when I finish it here shortly. I did finish the live action adaptation of Yu Yu Hakusho, which is one of my favorite manga/anime of all time. It's a very strange adaptation. So, you know, I forget if it's 150 or something episodes of the anime, and the live action, they condensed it all down to 5-hour-long, not even 5-hour-long episodes. So if that gives you any idea of like what is going on in the story and how it's just completely reworked, like the grains of the soul are there inside the show, and so I can appreciate it for that. There are some like okay action scenes. It is a Netflix show with like a limited budget, so you can imagine what some of the CGI looks like in there, but all in all, it's pretty decent. If you're not a fan of it, this is not the way I would want you to be exposed to the series, because the anime is probably the way to go. It's great. And it is on Netflix, I believe, so you can go ahead and watch it there. And just quickly, I have not watched any of the big shows that are out right now, so I have not watched Shogun, I have not watched Fallout, and my favorite series of all time currently has an adaptation out, and that is The 3 Body Problem, and I haven't watched that either. I'm pretty worried about watching the 3 Body Problem one, just because when a series means so much to you, sometimes I think it's better to not, because I don't know if I can really separate myself from it, though it has been so long since I've read it that I feel like maybe I can. I think in general, it's got like a positive mixed reception maybe, so I don't know. If you've watched it, definitely let me know what you think, if I should go ahead and watch it as somebody who loves the book. Like Death's End is my favorite book of all time, and so just to give you an idea of how much I care about those books. But that was my month of April. Definitely let me know what you read, what your book of the month was, what are you watching, playing, all that fun stuff. Let me know. I'd love to hear it down in the comments. And as always, have a good one.